All right, happy to bring in Meghan McKeown. You can see her on Big Ten Network. You can see her on ESPN, Field of 68 with our guy, Trevor Valise. She's all over the place, and she's fantastic. So happy to have you on, Meghan, because we got to talk about this resurgence Illini women's basketball program, among other things.
No, I'm happy to be here. And I tell you what, this has been the biggest surprise in women's college basketball has been the emergence of Illinois because, I mean, to be like candid, they were awful for the last 5 to 8 years. And so for them to just reemerge as quickly as they had, it's been really cool to watch. And I personally am such a big Shauna Green fan that I'm not surprised at all that she has been able to accomplish this. But yeah, it has been something just to see the way that they've been so consistent this year and really have become one of the top teams in the Big Ten.
Well, Meghan, we got to start there because you knew Shauna Green before most of us knew Shauna Green. Of course, she coached for your dad. If people don't know, Joe McEwen, great coach at Northwestern. Obviously, he's not feeling great about Shauna the last couple of weeks with 2 wins for Illinois over Northwestern. But she served as an assistant for your dad back in 2015-16, I believe. So what'd you learn about Shauna then and what stood out about her? Any stories about Shauna?
You know, Shauna is a great recruiter. And so one of my favorite stories that Shauna and my dad have, so they were recruiting Abby Scheid to Northwestern, and Abby Scheid ended up being like a first-team All-Big Ten selection. She led the nation in three-point shooting her senior year. And it was actually the year that Northwestern won the Big Ten regular season. So Shauna and my dad went on a home visit to visit Abby Scheid in Minnesota. And a fun fact is my dad is highly allergic to cats. And so they walk into the house, him and Shauna, and Karen the cat is there. And they're sitting there on the visit. And I think it's like Shauna's first home visit with my dad. And my dad is just like busting out into an allergic reaction. He's like going to the bathroom every like 5 minutes to blow his nose. Like he's just totally breaking down, having an allergic reaction. And so they walk out of the house afterwards, and Shauna looks at him and says, "Do you want me to take you to the hospital or to the bar?" And he said, "Let's go to the bar." And they ended up signing Abby Scheid. But it's always the funniest story. She talks about, they talk about how you just blew up, from this allergic reaction. But, I think it's coaches are so interesting to me because, we see as the public this like super professional all basketball side to them. But I don't think very many people realize like how great of a personality and how much fun Coach Green is as a human.
So when she got hired at Illinois, what'd you think about it? Because it's a little different than what Illinois obviously had previously with Nancy Fay, D3 Hall of Famer, probably more along the lines of what they had Matt Bollant, who started well, coming from Green Bay. But what'd you think of that hire initially?
Shauna Green has had sustained success at another school. And I think it's really interesting when you kind of look at the landscape of what athletic directors look for when they hire head coaches. To me, it's so important to prove that you can be successful running a program at the Division I level. And Shauna, to Dayton, and my dad was very sad. She left after 1 year. I think she will go down as one of his favorite assistants, but it was the right move for her to go to Dayton at the time. And she took that program and they went to multiple NCAA tournaments. She just really had an identity there at Dayton, which I think is a great job, by the way, in that conference in the A-10. And for her to have that success, to understand the type of kid she wanted to recruit, to understand what her identity as a head coach is, for Illinois to hire her, that's such a no-brainer. And I was disappointed. I didn't even think of it whenever that job came open as her being a possible candidate. But talk about a home run hire by your athletic director at Illinois, because she just has a swagger to her. She understands how to recruit in the Midwest. And most importantly, she has an identity as a head coach.
So, obviously this season has been ridiculous. As you said, this has been a bad program for a really long time. So Matt, when you were playing, and as you're watching your dad in this conference, like, what did you think of Illinois women's basketball? Like, what was your outside perspective of the disaster that it was?
And it's really hard to win in the Big Ten. Yeah. But, Illinois they weren't, when you looked at them, it was one of those things where you went into the year, and if you had Illinois twice on your schedule, you were pumped because you knew that was 2 automatic wins. And that's how the Big Ten viewed Illinois. So for them to, kind of emerge and it's no longer an automatic win, and the Big Ten has enough parity as is. Like, it's truly, it's great for the league, but it stinks for everyone else who has to play them now 2 times. But yeah, when you played Illinois, like, you knew that was going to be an easy W and no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You got to kind of go on to the next game.
Yeah. So you said she's got an identity. What is that identity, and has it showed up year one for Illinois?
The identity of Shauna Green, well, it's interesting. She wants to play fast. She talks a lot about getting into her Phoenix transition. So she wants to try to score within 6 or 7 seconds, which is kind of similar to what Brad Underwood wants to do on the men's side, as well, playing that kind of more of a fast pace if they can. But what Shauna has done a great job with her team is being really disciplined and dictating that pace of play. So when they can get out and run, they will. But also, I saw it against Iowa this year. They slowed that game down so much that it frustrated Iowa, and therefore, like, Illinois was able to kind of force the Hawkeyes to play defense for 30 seconds, which no one wants to do, by the way. No defender, you cannot look me in the eye and tell me you want to play defense for 30 seconds. And as a result, like, Illinois is able to come away with this win because they were able to frustrate Iowa so much by slowing down that pace of play. And then defensively, Shauna Green is so committed to that one-on-one defense, being able to stay physical, yet stay in front of your man, and not have to help off too much because you're just so good defensively one-on-one and understanding your personnel with each scout specific game. So for her, I just think the identity of this team is discipline. And that's just something we have not seen from the Illini program over the course of a really long time.
16 wins in a season. I came into this year saying if they can get 5 or 6 Big Ten wins, that'd be a huge success. They already have that through 9 games.
Mm-hmm.
How has she been able to turn this so quickly? And as you said, become one of the better teams in the Big Ten?
So much of this too, it's an interesting case study about, how can you succeed from the transfer portal? And, how the transfer portal is currently made up in 2022, you can get kids in right away and they can start playing with immediate eligibility, which wasn't the case, over the last 3 or 4 years. You haven't been able to do that. So for these kids to have an extra COVID year or whatever, and then be able to answer the portal and her to get them. Now, granted, you have to convince these kids to come to Champaign. But that being said, I think she's done a great job utilizing the portal, finding kids that fit her style of play that she wants to coach. And it's been a complete formula for success. Now, granted, Cook and Shupil came from Dayton with her, which is huge. And talking to different coaches in the Big Ten, I talked to Lisa Puder from Iowa, and she was like, Makira Cook has been a Power 5 kid when she was getting recruited. Like, make no mistake about it. But Cook's really loyal to Coach Green and was like, I want to go with you. And, she took a visit and ended up falling in love with it. And here we are now, and Cook's become one of the top scorers in the Big Ten. But I think what Green's done a great job of is, utilizing that transfer portal, because most of its talent, 3 starters are transfers. Yep. And there's not a lot of, carryover from that last team. Now, you do have Kendall Bostic and Adalia McKenzie, who have both been great. I mean, Kendall Bostic is one of the best rebounders in the Big Ten. And it's really frustrating as an opponent because she creates so many second chance opportunities and extra possessions for Illinois just because she's a pest down there, getting rebounds. So, but these kids have just really done a good job adjusting and buying into what Coach Green has asked for. And a lot of that success is coming from having a player like Makira Cook take over and understanding the Green system already.
Yeah, Makira and Genesis Bryant, the other transfer guard, I haven't seen dynamic guards like that at Illinois in a long time. Like, they're undersized, Megan, but they can go get a bucket whenever. And you pair that with Adalia, who's kind of this physical, I compare it to Illinois basketball, like Ravante Rice kind of physical scorer at the rim. Those are 3 dynamic guards where it feels like Illinois can match up with almost anybody in the Big Ten with those 3 in the backcourt.
And they're quick too. Yeah. And it's hard to stay in front of them as a defender. Genesis Bryant against Northwestern this weekend just hit a freaking gut check 3, time expiring on the shot clock to really ice the game. And, these players just have so much poise when they play. And I think, when you're playing and this game is so emotional as is, and you have to really, survive the highs and lows, teams going on runs and whatnot. And Shauna's team just never at any point gets too flustered or frustrated. They just are so solid and steady, which goes back to that discipline portion of what a Shauna Green team is built as. But those guards you mentioned, Cook and Genesis Bryant, they can score in the mid-range. They can knock it down from three. I mean, Illinois is shooting 40% from three as a team right now. That leads the Big Ten. They're just so difficult to guard because there's so many dynamic playmakers on the floor at one time.
You mentioned Kendall Bostic. You could probably put a Dally McKenzie in here. Like, how much better have they gotten in the season with Shauna?
And Bostic did a really nice job rebounding last year as well. She was in the top. I believe she led the league in rebounding for most of the season. I just think that what Bostic's kind of developed more this year, I think, is just confidence, and she's being utilized in the offense more, so she can step out and kind of hit a 10-footer, which, draws the defense away from the basket more, and it allows for, if she misses it, offensive rebounds to happen. And that's kind of become her identity, is just like cleaning things up on the board. And now she's a threat inside. So Illinois can now kind of have that inside outside game. And McKenzie, again, was a scorer last year, but I think it's just having more confidence and her skills being utilized even more within Shauna's system.
Obviously, they've gotten a big win against Iowa. They almost did against Indiana and Ohio State. Weren't able to close those games out. What's the next step in Shauna's build here? To amazingly, they're in the middle of the Big Ten right now, maybe the upper half, but to take it another level, to beat those kind of teams.
It's all about consistency. And I don't believe Illinois has been blown out of a game yet this season. So, I mean, they went down to the wire with Indiana twice, and that's, arguably one of the best teams in the Big Ten. So the next step for them is just going to be trying to sneak away another couple of wins against top teams in the Big Ten. Now, moving forward, as we're in the dog days of conference play and everyone's tired, everyone's banged up. But for Illinois, they just have to make sure they're beating the teams that are lower than them in the standings, so taking care of business, and then also trying to sneak, a couple more ranked wins away, which they're going to have the opportunity to play here down the stretch. So, I mean, you just got to stay focused and take it one game at a time. If that's not the biggest coaching cliche I've ever said, I don't know what is, but it rings true for this team.
All right, Megan, I see in the net rankings, Illinois number 31. How many more wins do you think they need to be an NCAA tournament team? That's something we haven't talked about in 20 years in Illinois, by the way.
Isn't that absolutely wild? And I'm going to pull up their schedule as well so I can take a look at this. And you're right. It's not something we've talked about. And it just goes to also show you like the depth of the Big Ten and how good it's been on the women's side on the men's side too. But you're going to need 20 wins obviously to get in. So they're 16-4 right now. I mean, I think they win 20-21. They're a lock. Coming up, I mean, what's going to be a big game for them is when they're at Michigan on February 2nd. If they can pull away a win there, that could be – actually, I have that game on the 2nd. So that'll be a big one for them. If they can pull away, sneak one on the road at Michigan or at Nebraska or at Maryland, they have a couple here that they can really solidify themselves as not just like could they be an NCAA tournament team? No, they will be a NCAA tournament team if they can beat, Michigan on the road or Nebraska on the road or Maryland on the road.
Megan, what do you think long-term Illinois women's basketball is capable of being?
This is a team, I mean, based off of this year, and I'm curious about that as well, because I think a lot of the reason why they're having success, yes, they're good, but also most of these teams in the Big Ten aren't prepared for them because they just haven't seen that much of them yet this year. And so there's so little data to work on regarding how to really stop this team. That being said, if Coach Green can continue bringing in dynamic guards that can score, and she can have multiple playmakers on the floor at the same time, like there's no reason why Illinois can't be a team that ranks in the top 5 in the Big Ten consistently year in and year out. I've always said, I think Illinois is a great university, and it's a program that I think should always be good in all of the sports because, you can get to Champaign, you're outside of a big city, 2 hours, you can get there. You have a great fan base. You have good facilities. There's just a lot of hype surrounding the school right now. And we see with the football program and men's basketball as well. So there's no reason why Illinois can't be a powerhouse in the Big Ten.
Well, Megan, switching to the men's side, besides Purdue and Minnesota, I don't know if we know what any of these other teams are, but what's your take on Illinois men's basketball so far?
Illinois men's basketball was one of those teams where I was really high on them at the beginning of the year, and I think everyone was. They were one of I think there were only 3 Big Ten teams ranked in the top 25 preseason wise, and I think they've shown really good spurts. Like at the end of the day, like you've got so many different dynamic scores between Terrence Shannon Jr. I think we're starting just to see what Matthew Meyer's capable of. How good has Dane Danger been? I mean, just like he's been really fun to watch. And, this is an Illinois team, I think, that just has to like sustain the course of Big Ten play, which everyone beats the crap out of everybody night in and night out. What's wild to me right now when you look at the league is, like you said, you got Purdue. I mean, shoot, Minnesota beat Ohio State earlier this month. Like, what's going on there? But you have 9 different teams that have 3 or 4 wins in the Big Ten. So, like, there really isn't any separation. My favorite team in the Big Ten is Rutgers, just because their ability to defend, I think, is going to help push them a really long way. But, I mean, look, there's no reason why this Illinois team still can't emerge as, a top 6 seed in the NCAA tournament. And, they can just, like, continue picking up big wins. But I think their biggest issue right now has just been that, consistency in Big Ten play. Losing to Indiana obviously didn't help, but they got a big stretch down here, Ohio State and Wisconsin coming their way. So it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of shakes out over the course of the next couple of weeks.
You mentioned Shauna kind of as a case study of like the transfer portal. Like Illinois men's basketball has kind of been that way as well. They started off great, all this talent, then they hit their rut, and then they go on a 4-game win streak. But the transfer portal age, I think Ohio State's going through it too. Feels like they just need time to click, and we'll see if Illinois can ever click. But when they do, we know it can be really good.
And you kind of have seen across the Big Ten, like Andrew Funk at Penn State has been a really nice addition for Shrewsbury there. And, my goodness, Cam Spencer, just like Mr. Clutch, has been a great addition to Rutgers. But you see the teams that are having the most success. And I think Michigan State's also going to kind of start to click right now. I think they're kind of on the verge of doing that. And they got a lot of returners that have been under their head coach's system for at least a year or so. And so those are the kind of the teams that I think we're seeing separate themselves as having some success. But look, that's not to say that it takes time when you have new players in, like it takes time to learn a coach's system, how to play with your teammates. And, Illinois has had some big shakeups this year with, guys being in and out of the roster and whatnot. So it takes time. I hate to say it, but it really does. But, you look at the top of the Big Ten right now, Purdue has 2 freshmen that have been really successful. Like Zach Eady's been in that system for a long time, as have a lot of the supporting roles. So that's, I think, why they've had so much success.
Megan, one more thing before I let you go. I thought the Chicago Sky was so big for this area in women's basketball. I think Illinois women's basketball having success is great. How do you feel about, like, is the sport getting the attention it deserves? Like, do you feel like it's going in the right direction there?
I do. It's starting to. And, it's so funny. People are like finally taking an interest in women's basketball. And this has been my life since I was born. So I'm like, hey, welcome to the party. It's always been this fun. But the product right now is so good. And the talent level is just astronomical, especially in women's college basketball. Like you take a look around the league and, Caitlin Clark for Iowa is going to be a generational talent. And she's so exciting to watch, and it's electric. And you look at what Dawn Staley's done at South Carolina and just how dominant they've been. I always laugh, and like I love basketball, period. But I always laugh at the people who say, "Oh, I don't like women's basketball." And to me, I'm like, if you're a basketball purist, you should love women's basketball because it's more fundamental than the men's game because you can't play above the rim. So as a result, you have to be more skilled, you have to be more fundamental. And to me, like, it's just a beautiful game to watch when it's played well. But I tell you the one thing, my biggest bone to pick with men's college basketball right now. Can we change to quarters, please? Change to quarters and advance the ball under a minute. Like the NBA is doing it. You're the only league left in the universe that still is playing halves. Let's go to quarters, make this thing go a little bit faster, and for the love of God, advance the ball under a minute.
I'm with you, Megan. Like it is, like I've enjoyed so much the quarters. Like watching now more Illinois women's basketball. Like it's a far better system.
It is. It goes by faster. It's more of you can watch a women's game. I mean, these women's games. You're like an hour 45 at most nowadays. So, which is great. I mean, none of us have an attention span anymore. Social media has ruined all of us at this point. So, the quicker the better.
Meghan McKeown, this is great. Appreciate your time. Keep up the great work. Your Big Ten Network, ESPN, Field of 68. Hopefully we'll catch up with you down the line.
Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate it.